Welcome and good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. I know how valuable your time is, and the fact that you're all here tonight just further proves the love and commitment you have to this work. Seriously, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. I am thrilled tonight to share a tool with you that I know will ease the social, political, emotional tensions and will create allies and leaders in your classroom. It's the baseline of everything I do in education. And tonight you're going to get a comprehensive overview of connection circles. Because as an educator, it's the biggest game changer I've encountered. Whether charter, private, public, no matter where you're coming from, circles are beneficial in absolutely all settings. Whether you are a veteran teacher or just starting out as a student teacher, it's never too late and it's definitely never too early to implement this amazing tool. So, if you're privy to the social media thing, you're probably going to want to follow us or tag us. Hashtag circles, not walls. Um, this is a movement, guys, and you're going to really want to be kept abreast of all the things that are going to be going on with circles and restorative practices. And as you probably realize, you're here tonight for a really specific reason. The relevance of circles today is more timely now than ever. This is really more than a webinar, folks. It's a movement, like I said, and you're officially a part of it. So stay in the loop, be part of the buzz, and follow us or tag us after tonight's call using our hashtag, as you see here, circles, not walls. So, speaking of hashtags and social media, I think you'll all agree as teachers that there's a time to connect and a time to disconnect. So, just as you don't necessarily want your students on their phones in class, I'm going to ask you right now to take this moment, close the door, silence your phone, close your email. If you're anything like me, close all those open tabs on your browser and just absorb. After all, you're here for a really legitimate reason. And yeah, we want you to be present. So come on, just put it all aside right now and let's just be present here together. As you probably would agree, the struggle is real out there. It deserves our wholehearted attention. So give this time to yourself and expand your capacity and learn a new skill. You deserve it. We're lifelong learners, and tonight you're going to walk away with an amazing skill that's really going to change the way you work. Also, take this opportunity to get out a pen, some paper. If you're the note taking type, this is going to be a lesson that you're probably going to want to jot down some notes on. But don't stress out too much because I'm going to hook you up with some solid cliff notes from tonight's call. I know it's late and you've probably taught all day, so I don't want you to have to work too hard. And if you're thinking you'll just hop off this little webinar and read the cliff notes afterwards, well, that would be a huge mistake because you'll miss out on the soul of what this work is all about. So stay connected. Keep an eye out on your email box. I'll definitely be getting those cliff notes to you after tonight's call. Now, again, about staying connected till the very end, our way of honoring your time is our little stay connected bonus. So at the end of our session, I'll tell you how to get a certificate of this webinar completion. It will be good for an hour and a half of professional development credit. And I'll also share some super special bonuses with you that you're definitely not going to want to miss out. So stay connected, folks. All right, now here we go. I don't know about you guys, but it's it seems to me that our jobs have been a little harder as of late. I know you don't really know much about me. I don't really know much about you yet. But if you knew me, you'd know that I've had the opportunity to explore several professions outside the field of education. You'd know that I believe teaching is absolutely, without a doubt, the hardest job on the planet. Forget rocket science, teaching is the hardest job out there. And especially now, everyone knows we're not in this job for the money. Everything that was festering beneath the surface right now, it's all boiling to the top. And if you're like me and many of my colleagues, the tension of the past election has really made everything harder. No matter what side of the coin you're on, there's just this general like tension that our students are carrying around. And it's palpable. So these are a few things that I've heard. You can look at these bullets. Not only have I heard this secondhand, but I've witnessed it firsthand myself. I'd like to take this moment actually right now and hear from you. So you'll notice here in the webinar, there's a little chat box. Go ahead and take this opportunity right now. Tell me your name, where you're from, and or where you are right now, and maybe even what grade level you teach. And what have you been noticing? What are some of the things that you've been noticing? Um, Whether it's a increase of bullying or, you know, whatever you're feeling right now. I see a couple people are already starting to type in. Thank you so much. I'll give you guys a couple minutes to go ahead and share with me where you're all coming. Wow, yeah, we got peeps from all over the country. Um, wow, this is amazing. All right, I see a lot of you guys are still typing some stuff in. I'm gonna go ahead and share out one of the things I've seen here. Um, one of you have written, one of the participants tonight has written, cruel behavior seems to be rampant. I've heard more racially charged comments from students, and I don't know how to make the time to deal with such tough behavior and deep issues. I completely concur. That is definitely something I've noticed as well. Thank you for your courageous words and for sharing. For the sake of time, I'm just going to read that one. I know a lot of us are feeling it, and what we're hearing from the kids is even more distressing. So, whether it's an increase in microaggressions or simply an increase in bullying behavior, or just an overall heightened sense of anxiety, I think we can all agree that something definitely feels different. And at the end of the day, no matter who is in office, we have classes to teach and students to support. I personally don't know how I'd be able to navigate through all of it if it weren't for restorative practices. More specifically, the power of circles. So, let me tell you a little bit about myself. Before we dive into our content, I want to give you a little bit more background about who I am because I want you to be assured that I got you. Me llamo Alicia Garcia. I'm a blue-eyed, California-raised Puerto Rican. I'm an educator, first and foremost. However, I haven't always been an educator. I started off my professional career in the film industry for several years, and then eventually I found myself as a Title I elementary school teacher in Colorado. I worked with, gosh, some of the most marginalized and challenging kiddos right out the gate. And I definitely felt the heat of being thrown into the fire. As a young teacher that was desperate for strategies and answers, I would spend my nights searching the internet for new modalities to help ease the challenges I saw and faced in the classroom. And to be quite honest, I was on the brink of finding a whole new profession because the residual trauma I was facing on a day to day basis, well, it was just beginning to be too much to handle. That, coupled with the constant defiance and disruption, let's just say the best of me was getting got. And I would come home in literally physical pain due to the exhaustion. Even though I was struggling to find tools, I did have something really powerful going for me, and that was my ability to build strong relationships. I was the relationship boss. I was always the go to person when it came to responding to those tier two, tier three students, and the first adult in the building kids would go to for help. So, my principal at the time saw, I don't know, for lack of a better term, my Jedi relationship abilities and asked me to move on from my instructional classroom position to a behavior specialist role. What happened next? It forever changed my life. The school I was working at decided to implement restorative practices school wide. The principal asked me to spearhead the effort. In 2013, I met the team from Resolutionaries, and my obsession with all things restorative was ignited. It was effective, it was amazing, and I just couldn't get enough. You see here, this is kind of the evolution of me in my teaching life. You see my first week teaching, I look so bright eyed and bushy tailed. The picture in the middle is me teaching without restorative practices, and then the far right is me teaching now. The first thing I was exposed to in restorative practices was Resolutionaries founder Dr. Beverly Title's 5R framework. We're going to go into a little bit of that a little later. After reading it, something clicked, and I could begin to see how this framework would allow me to address tough issues without damaging relationships. Next, I was trained in connection circles. That's what we're going to go into deep tonight. I was intrigued. I had nothing to lose, and so I tried one right away, straight out the gate. It felt amazing. Just like if you gave a pre-assessment to your students, or sorry, a final assessment to your students, and everyone just did exceptionally well, that kind of rush that you get as a teacher, that's the way I felt. Um, in less than 10 minutes, with this circle, I knew more about the students than I discovered in 2 years of knowing them, and I was hooked. I became, um, like I said, obsessed with restorative practices, and I began holding circles every day, sometimes multiple times a day. My initial swoon was due to the fact that not only did the relationships I shared with the students change, but the relationships they shared with each other did as well. We were so successful in the implementations of restorative practices at my school in Colorado that when I left there to move to San Francisco, I was approached by Resolutionaries to help with this work with educators like you. So I do this part time, and the other half of the time I'm in the trenches at a public middle school in San Francisco, SFUSD, as a restorative practice coordinator. My absolute favorite thing is to support teachers like you. I sleep, breathe, eat restorative practices, and I can't wait to share connection circles with you tonight and give you the gift that has allowed me to stay in this profession and doing my part to balance out what's going on in our country. I'm going to go as deep as I can on connection circles tonight so that you have what you need to get started. I really hope that some of you will be inspired, just like I was, to go deeper, and at the end of the call, I'll hook you up with a way you can do that. Before we plunge into the how-to connection circle content, I need to give you a little quick overview on the 5 R's that I mentioned briefly before, and a tiny bit on what restorative practices are all about, just to, set the stage and give you guys some context. So here we go, the 5 R's. Relationship, respect, responsibility, repair, and reintegration. The order is very intentional. I can think of a handful of students that would drive me absolutely nuts due to their inability to take responsibility for their actions. It was a major roadblock for us to take a restorative route when that responsibility piece was not intact. Many teachers actually have shared similar frustrations with me. So let me just tell you, in order for any restorative practice to be truly effective, all the R's that you see here, they got to be present. If responsibility is a challenge, then we need to go back to respect and relationship. Quite often, when I encounter a challenging situation that has me absolutely stumped, I go back to the 5 R's and I find a solution. The 5 R's are the container where restorative practices thrive best. Alone, they're just concepts, but together they are a framework and provide an incredible safety net as people start using restorative practices. Each feeds into the next, providing this amazing web of support. So, when I first got introduced to restorative practices and was getting more steeped in it, I started to realize how punitive some of my thinking still was, despite the fact that my core values were restorative and my beliefs were actually pretty holistic. This is really understandable, so don't fret if you find yourself in the same boat, because most of us have grown up with sort of a punitive and power over structure. So it takes some time and a lot of work to kind of shift that paradigm. Don't worry. Let me give you a little bit more background here on Resolutionary's founder. So, Beverly Title, our Resolutionary's founder, started off as an alternative high school teacher, and her students taught her that discipline would be necessary, but that punishment just simply would not work. At the same time, she knew that being lenient wasn't the answer, because she believed that one of the kindest things she could do for her students was to hold them accountable at the lowest level possible so that they could fix the issue before it caused even bigger problems. She developed a 5R framework to provide accountability within a context of care. Before I give you the connection circle structure, let me quickly tell you where they all came from. So, you may have heard of restorative justice, and you may have heard of restorative practices used interchangeably. Usually, restorative justice is affiliated with the criminal justice system, whereas restorative practices exist more in the educational or academic setting. Circles are a tool used in restorative justice and restorative practices, and they're definitely not a new skill by any means. We, as in humankind, emphasis on the kind, have actually been doing them for hundreds of years. The specific origins of restorative practices and circles, it's kind of unclear. However, we know that several indigenous peoples and cultures have been using them for a long time. The evidence of this varies from a diverse range of sources, from the practices of ancient indigenous Australian and Inuit communities. Some sources also include the Code of Hammurabi, the laws of Ethelbert of Kent, and even Homer's Iliad. So let's bring this all together now. It's go time. We're all here tonight because there's some overt anxiety and tensions that have been brought to the surface, um, bringing about a lot of anger, hate, fear, pain. And my question is, how do we become more unified in these divisive times? How do we come together to make a difference within our classroom? To be a force of good. Connection circles, I have found to be the greatest defense against hate, anger, fear, and pain. Connection circles are derived from a much bigger framework, such as the 5 R's in restorative practices. But for right now, let's just zoom in and dive into the nitty gritty. The lesson I'm sharing tonight is actually pulled straight out of Resolutionary's full training course on restorative practices. It's not something we typically give away for free, but given the turmoils our schools and students are facing right now, I felt called to get this into the hands of more educators. So without further ado, drum roll, let's break down connection circles. So as teachers, I know you're familiar with learning goals and objectives, so here you go. We're going to present a step-by-step process on how to set up and introduce the circle, how to use guidelines to ensure a safe process, developing appropriate and intentional guiding questions and prompts for your students, and finally, closing a circle with care. Now, the circle process provides a way of bringing people together in a really special kind of way. Everyone is respected and gets a chance to talk without interruption. Participants get to explain themselves by telling their stories. Everyone is equal. No person is more important than anyone else, and that's including you, the teacher. And the emotional aspects of the individual experiences are all welcome. So here we go. We're going to dive into all the how-to steps for connection circles in your classroom. I'll go through, explain each step, and when it feels needed, I'll go ahead and model what it would sound like being delivered to your class. Step number 1, setting up the space. You'll see here these students in their elementary school. They're sitting crisscross applesauce. Setting up the space really shows the power of intentional design. You're going to want to arrange the classroom and the actual circle. So this may be on the floor directly, like these students are pictured here, or in chairs. I've noticed with older students, they prefer chairs. It's important to create a space apart from our usual way of discussing difficult issues because it's really not often that we're given the opportunity to see each other eye to eye and notice and absorb, take in each other's body language. So keep in mind that desks can be prohibitive, especially if you have the desks that are connected to the chairs that are kind of tough to move. So you can create a space outside of your seating or desk area. Just make sure that everyone is all on the same level. I went into a classroom once and a teacher was in a big fluffy chair and all the students were sitting on the ground. And that just, the different levels of their seating arrangement really made it difficult for everybody to feel like there was equal power dynamics. So just keep that in mind when you're actually arranging your classroom and setting up the space. Now, setting up the arrangement is really important as well. Think about how you group your students for collaborative work for optimal productivity. Keep in mind that when you're setting up a circle, you want to have those considerations in mind. While assigned seats aren't by any means necessary, it may be able to help you out if certain students are distracted by each other, or conversely, if some students benefit from the comfort of a certain student's proximity. So, for instance, if you have like a student that's an English language learner, putting a student next to them that knows their native language may be of an assistance to them. Next, centerpiece. So this is useful for setting the tone of a circle, being a special time. It creates a focal point and become a nonverbal way of calling attention to your circle. You could definitely do a circle without a centerpiece, so don't worry if you don't have one all sorted out in the beginning. If you're looking for some cool ideas, by all means, check out Pinterest. It could be a really great way to gain student buy-in and get them involved. It usually sits on the floor in the center of the open space inside the circle of students. Um, I typically have the centerpiece set up before the students enter the circle. They can really emphasize inclusion by incorporating symbols of individual circle members, as well as cultures represented in the circle. If you see this one here has a picture of Nelson Mandela, some flowers, and there's also values placed inside the circle. We're going to go into guidelines and values in a little bit, but putting one word that a value that is important to the students is another great thing to put in your centerpiece. Circle introduction. So you'll know, and the students will notice that the room will be set up differently. Your kids are naturally going to be having some questions, especially if this is something that they have never seen before. So if you don't address the questions and the curiosities before you dive into doing your circle, then you'll find that they'll probably come up during the circle and disrupt the process. Just imagine, you have the circle set up. If you don't give proper scaffolding and background about what's going on, you'll be in the circle and you'll have students raising their hands or maybe even shouting out, "Miss, what are we doing? Why are we here? Why are we sitting like this?" And those sort of questions can definitely interrupt the process. So, some baseline information you can cover in your intro is sort of the how and the why, the history and the purpose. So, for the history and the how circles came to be, you can share that circles are a sacred process, that they've been used throughout time by indigenous cultures. You can include some images to go along with that, and here are some below. They were integrated in New Zealand as the go to response for all juvenile offenses in the criminal justice system in the 80s. And actually, it is being pushed in our country here to have restorative justice as a primary response to juvenile offenses as well. The purpose or the why we use them. You can actually ask your students what they notice about the shape of a circle and use those observations to draw the points of the purpose. So, something that may be shared or something that I've actually heard students share in the past is we sit in circles so that we can all be seen and heard. A circle shape allows for that. We sit in circle to get support from each other. A circle is everlasting. We have all that we need right here in this circle, just like we have everything we need in this community. I feel safe and supported when I am in circle. So, those are a little bit of the how and the why. Now, going into more of the history and the how, you may find it beneficial to dive into an introductory lesson. So, before I did my first connection circle, I created an intro lesson for my students to give them some background knowledge on circles. I've since developed several lessons differentiated for all levels of learners. We obviously don't have time to share that whole lesson plan tonight or go into several of them, but just wanted to share with you an image I pulled from one of my learning activities. Adults and young people alike are very intrigued by this image. It activates and satisfies curiosities. This is a tribe in Africa, children from a tribe in Africa, and they actually play a circle game in this formation. I rolled out one of the lessons at my current middle school, and every homeroom presented this lesson. Of the 600 plus students that had access to this lesson, nearly half of them requested to play the game that is associated with this image in our lesson plan. So, like I said, I wish I had time to share the lesson plan with you tonight, but we got to keep moving. So, hopefully, this gives you an idea of one of the many ways you can introduce circles to your classroom. Now, to keep circles safe, you have to have guidelines that everyone can agree to about how you will behave and treat each other while you are in the circle. I don't care how many circles you've had with your students, please state guidelines before every circle process. Ideally, you'll create these with your class, but we know you've got tons to cover. So here you go. We're just going to give you sort of the baseline. Use our guidelines. And here are some of the like non-negotiables. This was a poster I made for my students. I've seen a lot of different guideline posters used. My students created their own, but there are some really important main points that you want to cover. Your language can vary, but you really want to make sure you cover respect, anonymity, time, talking piece, and the optional pass. So here's what it might sound like. I'm gonna go ahead and model a little introduction. Good morning, class. I'm so excited to do our first circle together. It's really important, though, that we have some expectations and guidelines we can all agree to in order to keep our circles safe. Number one, we're going to listen and speak with respect. Only tell our truth. Respect is really important here. And in order for this circle to feel good for everyone, we need to make sure that we follow the guideline of respect. What that looks like is we listen and speak with respect, and we only tell our truth. Next, our talking piece, our all powerful talking stick. If you don't have it, you gotta zip it. We are gonna listen with our heart whenever we don't have the talking piece and listen with our mind as well. And whenever we do have the talking stick, we're going to speak from our heart and our mind. Time. We got to share the air so everyone has time to speak. If you're not feeling it, don't worry. We'll always be able to come back to you. The pass is always permissible, but please, if you pass, we'll come back around to you at the end of the circle. We do ask if you pass that you make sure that you're present with us. Respect everybody's privacy. What is said here stays here. And finally, our talking piece. Again, if you don't have it, zip it. And we really want to make sure that everyone, if you don't have the talking piece, it's your opportunity to be the most amazing listener you can be. I want you to imagine how you want to be heard and be that kind of listener. All right, so that kind of goes over the main points. Um, Again, these guidelines are just so important. I can't stress enough. Sometimes when I see guidelines overlooked before a circle, it really compromises the safety of the circle. So I cannot emphasize that enough. Going back to our talking piece, the purpose of having a talking piece is to create an environment of equity, an equitable environment, otherwise, for sharing. Everyone gets a chance to speak, and also everyone has the right to pass. For those that don't have the talking piece, it's an opportunity for them to actively listen to the speaker, as I mentioned, yeah, um, as I mentioned previously in our guidelines. So it's also really important to discuss the significance. So I always try and use something that has personal meaning, something with which I feel, I don't know, an authentic connection, such as a family heirloom or a gift somebody has given me. Um, you could even use an object that has meaning for the whole class. Um, it really elevates the sacred status of your circle without having to do much discussion about it. You could also create a talking piece as a class together. I found that that creates a lot of buy-in and respect. Um, so again, some language you may want to have around the talking piece is the person holding the talking piece is the only one who may speak. Everyone else in the circle is actively listening, trying not to spend too much time about what they're going to say. This talking piece usually is going to move around in a circular format, so clockwise or counterclockwise. Everyone has the opportunity to speak and the right to pass if they so choose. Even though someone may pass, they must still be present and participate. The facilitator may need to speak to move the process along. So, as a circle keeper, if I interrupt anyone, that is only because um, I need to keep the circle safe and move the process along. All right, so that's how it may sound. A couple advanced tips. Sometimes students get excited in circle. Again, respecting the talking piece would prohibit people from like agreeing with something somebody says or being disturbed audibly when somebody says something. So think about using silent signals of support. They are absolutely gold for managing reactions without shutting down students' feedback and emotions. We definitely don't want to shut students down when they're engaged and excited. Um, so something maybe like a thumbs up or I don't know, any sort of like physical demonstration of a signal of support. Also, you want to be thoughtful around the objects you use for the talking piece, like a balloon, going to make a lot of noise, a rain stick, not a good choice. Things that may cause damage, like a bouncing ball, something that would be thrown and be disruptive. Um, Things that could be inappropriately affiliated with human anatomy. I'll let you guys fill in the blanks there. But these are just things I've learned the hard way. Now, your circle prompts. Just as you scaffold and differentiate your instruction, you're going to want to present intentional questions for your circles. You're going to want to really harness careful design of your questions in order to facilitate a discussion that just goes beyond the surface. Keep in mind, too, that we want to go deep, but not too deep. We want to be sure everyone feels safe. So, choosing a topic that is appropriate for the group to discuss will directly impact the success of the circle. If this is a new group and you're just getting to know each other, then you may ask people to share what's important to them about being in this community. And that's something that would feed into like your community values, like I mentioned before. And they could put those values, write them down, put them in the center of the circle. Um, Prompts should be tiered according to the intention of the circle. So What are you looking to do? Are you looking to build relationship, build community? Are you just getting acquainted? Think about those intentions before giving up the prompt. You want to avoid yes and no questions because that really limits us from going deep. And also be strength or asset focused. So instead of asking something like, what is the hardest thing you've ever been through in your life? You may want to ask, hey, how did you get through a hard time in your life? Um, you want to build relationship first before you go into those deeper questions. So start with the value round. What is something that you value, or what's something important for you to feel safe? Another thing to keep in mind is the power of student generated prompts. Student generated prompts really increase buy-in. I keep a box right next to my door for students to write on post-its and put in their prompt suggestions, and it's a really great way to ensure engagement and buy-in. So, finally, the closing. As with any beautiful story, your circle will need a conclusion. The purpose of the closing is to close the circle with intention and to allow participants to re enter the world around them and acknowledge the work that was done in the circle. So, activities may include anything from a round of appreciations, a quote, a reading, a breathing exercise, yoga movement, music, sharing their greatest takeaway, or even a process check. I tend to have a process checker in my circles in middle school. That way, it's not me saying, hey guys, next time, can we please respect the talking piece and limit our physical movement that's disruptive? I actually put it on the students to sort of analyze and value and summarize how they feel they did in adhering to the guidelines of the circle at the very end. So I will have a circle keeper and I'll have a circle process checker, and that's another way to close. Having a closing really ensures a smooth transition into your next learning. So again, if you don't have your closing, you may notice that it's you get a really chunky and rough transition to your next lesson. So, gosh, step 4. That's that. Don't forget, in case you were wondering, these are some things that are kind of non-negotiables. If you're wondering what your next tattoo should be, and you're really into circles, you may want to consider some of these bullet points as your next tattoo. JK. Restorative practices are always voluntary. It's part of that whole respect and equity values inherent in the process. So, circles are no exceptions. Students are always able to pass, and when somebody passes, we're always going to be sending the talking piece around so that you can give those who pass a second opportunity to speak. So, another thing, connection circles are definitely not a problem solving tool. I know an amazing fifth grade teacher who is totally on board with restorative practices. She's on fire with them, in fact. Um, Her community building and connection circles were totally on point. Now, one day, a student took supplies and threw them all across her room, stormed out of the classroom screaming, and when the student came back in, this teacher welcomed him in a very kind tone and thought that this would be a good opportunity to have a circle. All the students gathered around, and the topic that the teacher selected was, how did Joe's behavior make us feel? Now, Joe was sitting in that circle, and the circle was all centered around his inappropriate behavior. That was an awesome intention by the teacher, but definitely the wrong question. Joe was so shut down by shame that he didn't speak for a week. And let me tell you, Joe is a talker. So we don't want to play the shame game. We don't want to single kids out. It's not a problem solving tool. Similarly, like if somebody's being bullied, you don't want to bring them together in circle and like talk about the bullying in circle. It's not problem solving. Finally, I already really emphasize this, but always start circle with guidelines. I don't want you to live the repercussions of not doing it. Just please take my advice. I've been doing this for a while, and I wouldn't be emphasizing it to the extent that I am if I didn't feel strongly about it from my own personal experience. Now, take a deep breath. We just covered a lot. Let me share with you now a quick example of how connection circles can be the most powerful tool in your teacher kit. This is Becky Miller. She's a colleague of mine in Colorado. She said, I can't imagine what we would have done without connection circles. It allowed us the opportunity to get to know the whole child and to see the big picture. From there, we were able to know what to do to meet the specific needs, and his blowout behavior stopped showing up. Now, the him she's talking about is this little guy right here. I know we prevented a lot of suspensions and expulsions by being restorative. This young boy went from spending 8% of the day in the classroom due to behavior to now spending 100% of his time in the classroom, successfully engaged in his lessons. The proof is in the pudding, guys. It works. It just does. Now, that's not to say that connection circles are a cure all. They're absolutely not. I'd be lying if I said, start doing connection circles and all your behavior challenges will go away. All the bullying behavior will go away. All the shouting out inappropriately will go away. That's not the truth, and I'm not going to tell you that it is. Connection circles are on the preventative side of restorative practices, okay? So I know we haven't really gone into the full spectrum of restorative practices. We've just dove really deeply into connection circles. So you just have had a little nibble, a taste of the first course, of the appetizer. We haven't even started the main course or dessert. And I'm going to ask you right now, go ahead and feel free and type in the chat box right now. Do I have your permission to go a little further? Are you curious to know a little bit more? Or do you want to zoom out a little and see how connection circles kind of fit in? All right. I'm getting a lot of yeses. So connection circles are on the preventative side of things. The more problem solving skills, those are called restorative agreement conversations and restorative mediation. So restorative practices is a continuum that starts with prevention and gradually transitions to intervention or problem solving. We dove deep into this circle process tonight, which, as I mentioned, is on the prevention side. They enable us to build relationships so that we have a solid foundation before implementing our intervention. Keep in mind, at the end of the call, I will tell you how to get hooked up with more ongoing support around circles, as well as with that PD certificate to present to your admin for credit for being on this webinar tonight. I just want to give you some background. Restorative practices are endorsed by the Department of Education for use to improve school climate and discipline, which are needed today more than ever. You'll see that this is a direct quote from the Southern Poverty Law Center. Resolutionaries has been teaching connection circles long before the election. Since 2009, actually, we've been training educators and students in restorative practices to close the achievement gap, to address the school to prison pipeline, provide bully prevention, and establishing culturally responsive classrooms. And with the rise of hate and division we are experiencing as of late, there is now an outcry from teachers for access to this work because real solutions are needed for these real problems. As I said before, this is a movement. Regardless of your political stance or your experience in the classroom, we have students to support, and classrooms must feel inclusive and foster understanding. Okay? This is a movement. If you're the type of teacher that is really into looking at Pinterest, this is way more than Pinterest can ever give you. This tool, I can't tell you how much it's a game changer. Um, I will tell you also right now that restorative practices aren't going anywhere. Now is your chance to be ahead of the game. This is not a trend. This is absolutely a movement that is going to be really widespread. The Department of Education is looking to implement restorative practices nationwide. In fact, I give it 5 years before it's commonplace in every public school. As you'll see here, this is taken right from the Department of Education's website. Um, they're showing the decline of corporal punishment. So, restorative practices is definitely on the rise. Right now is your opportunity to become an expert before it has become widespread across the nation. So, be ahead of the curve, be ahead of the game, guys. I ask you a question that I ask almost every single teacher I've encountered. What does the classroom of your dreams look like? What does it sound like? What does it feel like? Here are a few responses that I've logged. Now I ask you, what would you be willing to do in order for that to be a reality? What is it worth to you? I mean, honestly, think about that. In case you haven't already noticed, I'm super passionate about supporting educators become fluent in restorative practices. So you can be part of the solution our world desperately needs in these divisive times. It was really painful for me to leave the one-on-one nature of the classroom, instructional classroom setting, but now I get to share restorative practices with teachers all over the country. And so they get to change the lives of their students. And then those students carry it on. The impact is profound. I've given you a lot tonight, and I want to give you a little bit more. And I hope you're cool with that. You said you were, so I hope you still are. So let's zoom out a little bit. And I want to remind you, while connection circles are the best prevention tool out there, they're definitely not the cure-all. Conflict will be inevitable, even when you have stellar relationships. You know that old time adage of what is it? You hurt the ones you love most? Well, here you go, guys. The stronger your relationship, sometimes the stronger the conflict. And as I promised at the top of the call, I want to share with you a way to go deeper into this content so that you can develop the capacity to carry out the full gamut of restorative practice skills in order to impact generations of students. The best way I know how to teach you the full suite of restorative tools is to give you the access to Resolutionary's online training and community of practice. It's what I did and learned to be where I am now. It's designed for busy educators who want to create circles, not walls, and need relationship first tools to solve really tough problems. The retail price for the full online training is $997. All right, I know that's a lot of money. I know money is tight as an educator, but I want you to have access to this so badly, so badly. I've put together a really special offer just for you guys here tonight. And I'm guessing if you've stuck with me this far, you're interested and might like a better deal. So let me tell you about these special bonuses I'm throwing in to help support you as you learn these new game-changing tools. All right. Here, I'm going to break down all of our modules in our online training. All right. Then I'm going to give you a breakdown of all of the special offers I'm going to offer you. So here we go. 5-step system to prevent, resolve, and transform your classroom. This is module 1. This is the foundation upon which we will build our restorative frame. We cannot build a solid structure on a shoddy foundation, so this module is absolutely crucial. My experience is that this module was the first step in shifting my perspective and approach from what I thought to be holistic and kind of effective and restorative. All right? For me, when I first started restorative practices, I wanted a safety net because They were new and it seemed like a lot to take on. I wasn't totally comfortable with them right out the gate. The more I became familiar with the 5R framework, the more I would intuitively know how to respond. This foundational 5R framework is building your intuitive um, abilities to really to know how to approach a situation. Anytime I got stuck with what to do, I could always go back to the 5Rs and figure out the next step or what I had missed. It gave me a safety net for my work and restorative practices and allowed me to be courageous in trying out new practices. So, let me give you a little concrete example. I went from behavior management, okay, think about that word, behavior management, to responding to challenging behavior. All right, think about the difference in that. You may be totally perplexed, but classroom management, all right, there's one word, versus responding to challenging behavior. All right. Within this module, you will find a lot of reflection activities and surveys that will help to inform this paradigm shift and also build that foundational 5R framework. Module 2, connection circles. We went deep into these on this call, but we still only scratched the surface on what you can use connection circles for. Once you get more fluent with this tool, you can use them to discuss bigger issues, but you don't want to go into that without proper coaching and guidance. Now, some of the most incredible circles I have seen were student led. It's an incredible way to develop leadership and create opportunity for all in your classroom. Differentiation. So, you can also look into, with this module, you can look into acquiring the skills of differentiating circles for English language learners, students with exceptional needs, and accommodating multiple intelligences. Now, content and curriculum. I most frequently see circles run in an academic way. Academic circles are a beautiful way of interweaving circle practices into your classroom so that you are still including that content and curriculum. Module 3, restorative practice basics. So in this module, you will not only learn the stark difference between that which is punitive and that which is restorative, but it's all about helping you make that mindset shift that we've been talking about. All of us grew up with sort of a punitive background. And this module, well, through the reflection activities, through the videos, will really help not only you, but also your students begin to see that difference between punitive and restorative. The working with as opposed to working for. This will make it easier for take on some of the more advanced restorative practice tools that we'll be giving you in Module 5 and 6. So Module 4, behavior as communication. Understanding, being an educator, you probably have some understanding of Maslow's or Gardner's hierarchy of needs. Well, in this module, you're going to go into that and learn about how their relationship really affects how the relationship of this hierarchy of needs can lead to challenging behavior. In this module, we're going to expand our understanding of behavior as communication and really seeing behavior as an expression of a need that is not being met. This, paired with the foundation of restorative language, you will be so equipped for acquiring your next skill, which is restorative agreement conversation. So, Module 5 is when we start getting into that novice to intermediates area. Once you are starting getting into Module 5, you're entering this intermediate stage because you're going into more of the intervention side of the continuum, more of that problem solving side. This is a module with tremendous benefits. Building relationships is one thing, but even so, we can't avoid all harm and conflict. This is where we get a chance to heal and repair. Through restorative agreement conversations, I've seen students accept responsibility and never have any issue again because they get to decide how the harm is repaired. With restorative agreement conversations, it's nothing about us without us. Those impacted feel welcome and safe to speak and participate. Module 6. In this module, you'll be introduced to one of the most powerful tools for responsibility repair and reintegration. That is restorative mediation. You will see videos straight from the field of this practice in play. And while all of this may sound like a lot, we've done the painstaking task of paring down the learning to only the essentials. We know how valuable your time is, so we've been super mindful of only including precisely what you need. Wow. All right, so those are all the modules, right? As I mentioned, those modules in that online training, $997 retail price, okay? The community of practice is the bonus one of the many bonuses I'm offering tonight. It's a 1-year membership in our incredible community of practice. So people who want to stick around in our community pay us $297 a year to do so, but you'll get it for free. It's like a virtual living room, a place to share your most challenging situations, celebrations, and everything in between. This online forum is supported by Resolutionaries team members, like me, who will provide support, guidance, and suggestions. You'll enjoy being connected with other like-minded educators who will be your thought partners, inspiration, and also an invaluable resource library. In my experience, the most powerful feedback I've received in regards to restorative practices have come in the form of story or anecdote, and nothing is more relevant than real life. This community of practice serves as a think tank or a thought shop for you to share all of your successes and challenges and receive insight from like-minded educators who have walked in your shoes. Oh, and this other thing, feedback is immediate. Think of the last time you had one of those days, the kind where you pray for snow closure the next day because you just don't know how to muster facing the challenges again. Now imagine if you had a community's support to share your struggle and to get advice to implement immediately. Like I said at the beginning, I got you, girl, or boy, or anyone in between. I got you, teachers. Here we go with bonus number dose. 24 group coaching calls. This is a $1,200 value. Twice a month you could join me for a no-holds-barred coaching call. It's a chance to pick my brain, bring your questions, and get supports. After one of our last calls, a 4th grade teacher in his 3rd year teaching said it was the most impactful coaching he had ever received. But he didn't just hear from me. He had the ability to access the wisdom of an administrator and other teachers on the line who had experience with similar situations. It really does take a village. So the day after the call, he leapt into action with his next steps and felt immediate benefits. These calls are recorded, so even if you can't attend the live call, you can listen later and benefit from the wisdom that was shared. Again, the retail value on this is 1,200 buckaroos. I know, it's a lot. Now, bonus number 3. This priceless bonus gives you access to folks you couldn't get otherwise. These are 6 guest expert Q&A calls. The training program is designed for busy teachers, so all the content is housed in our membership site and can be accessed 24/7. So again, you can go through it at your own pace. For this guest expert Q&A calls, I don't even know what the price would be. It's priceless. So let me break down the value. The content and the bonuses are incredible and will give you what you need to truly build strong relationships and solve tough issues. And because it's all online, you can do it at your own pace. And since you're getting a year of coaching calls and community practice, you got time to learn and try things out and get support. So I just did some quick math. This is almost $2,500 at a retail value. All right. We're not in this for the money. We're in this for the movement. But because this is so crucial and I feel so passionate about sharing this all with you, I wanted to sweeten the deal even more. We're offering a $400 the time is now bonus for the first 50 people to register. So let me break that down for you. That's all 6 modules. That's retailed at $997. That's the coaching calls, the community of practice, and the guest Q&A calls. A total value of at least $2,500 for only $597. Okay? Remember when I asked you before about your perfect classroom, about the most ideal, like what you wish your classroom would look like, feel like, be like? What are you willing to do? Is it worth it to you? I know it's worth it to me. It's changed my life in education. Right now, $597, guys. It's a deal of a century. You can see the payment options. We're totally willing to work with you. You can go to the different payment options by going to www.circlesnotwalls.com/register, and the discount price bonus will remain on the page for the first 50 people. And then it will go up to the full retail price again of $997. Since you are here live, you've got a head start on grabbing the $400 discount. But we will share this replay for those who could not join us live, but you don't want to wait to grab your spot. Keep in mind, I know I've done this in the past with different professional development stuff outside continual learning. You can probably write off your membership as an educational expense on your taxes, and we'll provide you also with a certificate of completion at the end that you could submit for recertification credit. And to top that all off, there's a 30-day no risk money back guarantee. You'll gain so much from this training. I'm confident from the coaching calls. I know I have, and that's why I'm here tonight. That's why I want to share these things with you. The most valuable thing, I think, is the coaching and the concrete tools, the reflection, by experts that have been doing this for a long time. We've been in the trenches, we've been in the field of restorative practices. We're not only going to give you the concrete tools that you can apply immediately, but we're going to be with you every step of the way. All right? We're in this together. It takes a village. So you may be thinking some thoughts of skepticism. You may be a little reserved. You may be thinking, there's just too much content. Well, in response to that, I'll tell you this. One of my very dear friends, who is actually one of our RP experts, she said, my time and energy is too valuable not to use restorative practices. It's the main way I practice self-care in the classroom. So if you join our community, you'll be able to hear how she does it. And she's like one of the most baller boss RP teachers I know. So another thing you might be thinking is, I don't want to unpack my knapsack of white privilege. That is a really deep well to go into. Equity is woven into restorative practice work. As you work with restorative practices, your equity IQ increases in doing the work. We provide a safe platform for you to unpack this sensitive stuff as it comes up. And honestly, in these times we live in now, we'd be totally remiss not to acknowledge privilege. My response to this last point here. So you've had a tough day, and you can't really face more learning after teaching. The community of practice and our coaching calls will fill you up, and you'll be blown away how close we become, even though this is a virtual container. Relationships matter so much to us, and we can do them well even in the virtual format. So as I mentioned before, we got a 30-day money back guarantee. If you participate for a full 30 days but aren't satisfied, just submit your notes, your completed activities, along with the description of your dissatisfaction, and we'll refund your full tuition immediately. But I really doubt you'll need that. So, with all that said and done, I'd like to share with you a few things that our clients are saying about restorative practices in our classrooms. Because I'm using restorative practices in my classroom, I leave school at the end of each day with less weight on my shoulders. I have kids who come back asking for restorative resources so they can use them with other teachers, family, or peers. It's exciting to see kids keep using these techniques even after they've left my class. If you have any questions or you have any special payment requests, like processing payment through your district or PTO, please feel free to email us at support@resolutionariesinc.com. Now, head over to www.circlesnotwalls.com/register to get your spot in the course and claim all the incredible bonuses I just shared. You're going to also watch out for that email I mentioned just after this webinar with the certificate of webinar completion that you can show your admin, and also to get the access to those cliff notes. So thank you, a deep bow to all of you and your service to our kids. Your dedication is needed now more so than ever, and thank you so much. My appreciation is so great for all of your work. Thank you for being with us here tonight. I look forward to getting to know you more in the future. All the best. Keep up the good work. And ciao.